Welcome, dear listener, to a night of enchanting stories where magic and mystery blend seamlessly with the quiet beauty of nature. Tonight we explore 3 extraordinary tales that will take you deep into worlds full of wonder, wisdom, and secrets hidden in the shadows. First, we embark on the journey of the Witch of the Whispering Woods, where young Callista steps into the heart of an ancient forest to discover the truths behind the legends and the power within herself. Then we follow the alchemist's apprentice as young Emil enters a tower filled with potions and secrets, learning that alchemy is as much about the spirit as it is about the elements. Finally, we witness the Midnight Council of Witches as a powerful group of witches gathers under the full moon to protect the balance of magic from a looming darkness. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and imagine the cool night air as we venture into a world bathed in moonlight where every shadow has a story and each whisper carries the promise of something extraordinary. Let's begin. The Witch of the Whispering Woods. Chapter 1. The soft murmur of the Whispering Woods had always intrigued the villagers of Elysia. It was said that the woods held secrets older than time itself, with each tree a keeper of ancient wisdom, its branches rustling like aged storytellers. The villagers spoke of a witch who lived deep within, a mysterious figure who could bend nature to her will, and whose very name was lost to the winds. Only the bravest dared venture past the edge of the forest, for there were whispers not just of wisdom, but of magic, terrifying yet beautiful. Young Callista had always been fascinated by these stories. Every night, as she lay under the vast canopy of stars, her grandmother would tell her tales of the Witch of the Whispering Woods. She would speak of how the witch could call upon the birds to sing the forgotten songs of the earth, and how the forest itself would shift its path for her. Callista's curiosity grew, a yearning that made her heart beat faster every time she gazed at the distant edge of the woods. One day, after the harvest festival had ended and the laughter of the villagers had quieted, Callista stood at the edge of the Whispering Woods. The air seemed different that evening, crisp yet warm, as though the forest itself was inviting her in. The scent of pine and earth filled her senses, and the distant rustle of leaves seemed to call her name, urging her forward. "Callista, come back!" her brother, Petros, called from behind her. He sounded worried, his eyes wide with fear. "You know what they say about those woods. People enter, but they don't always return." Callista turned, a small smile playing on her lips. "They say the witch only keeps those who are lost. I'm not lost, Petros. I just want to see what lies beyond the stories." Petros hesitated, his brow furrowed with concern. "But what if you can't find your way back? What if the witch doesn't let you go?" Callista reached out and squeezed her brother's hand reassuringly. "I promise I'll be careful. I won't go too far. I just need to know, Petros. I need to see it for myself." With that, she took a step forward, and then another. The woods seemed to part for her, and with a final glance back at her brother, she disappeared into the shadows, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. The whispers grew louder as she moved deeper into the woods, the rustling leaves forming words in languages she couldn't understand. The path before her seemed to shift, guiding her feet, until she came to a clearing. The trees around her stood tall and ancient, their branches woven together like a protective canopy. In the center stood a cottage made of twisted vines and bark, the roof covered in vibrant moss. A small stream wound its way around the clearing, its waters shimmering in the fading light. Callista stepped closer, her breath held in anticipation. The door opened before she could knock, revealing a woman with eyes like the forest, deep and knowing, yet filled with mystery. Her hair was dark, streaked with silver, and it cascaded down her back like a waterfall of shadows. "Welcome, child," the witch said, her voice as soft as the wind that rustled through the leaves. "I have been expecting you." Chapter 2. The witch's name was Thalia, though she preferred not to use names, for names held power. Her face, lined with age, was gentle, and her eyes held 1,000 secrets, each whispering to Callista in ways she couldn't quite understand. The air within the cottage was filled with the scent of herbs and earth, comforting yet foreign. Dried flowers hung from the ceiling, their colours vibrant even in the dim light, and shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of mysterious powders and potions. "Why have you come, child?" Thalia asked, her gaze piercing yet kind. Callista hesitated, the words tangled in her throat. "I wanted to know the truth. The villagers speak of you with both fear and reverence. I want to understand who you are." The witch smiled, her lips curving as if amused. She moved to a small table by the window, motioning for Callista to sit. "The truth is a fickle thing, dear one. It changes with those who speak it. What is it that you wish to learn? The magic of the forest? Or perhaps the magic within yourself?" Callista blinked, caught off guard. "The magic within myself?" Thalia nodded, her eyes narrowing slightly as she studied Callista. "The forest called you because it sensed something, an untapped potential, a light that has not yet been awakened. The woods and I are but guardians, but you, Callista, have the power to shape your own path." Callista felt a warmth spreading through her chest. Her grandmother's stories had painted the witch as an all-powerful being, but sitting here, across from Thalia, Callista saw something different. Thalia was not a being of terrifying magic, but a keeper of balance, one who guided, not controlled. "Would you teach me?" Callista asked, her voice barely a whisper. Thalia's eyes sparkled, and she nodded. "If you are willing to listen to the forest, I will show you its secrets." Over the following days, Thalia taught Callista the ways of the forest. She showed her how to listen to the trees, to understand the language of the wind, and to feel the pulse of the earth beneath her feet. They spent hours gathering herbs, Thalia explaining their uses, their properties, and the balance they brought to the world. Callista learned to brew potions, each one more complex than the last, their scents filling the cottage with a mix of sweetness and spice. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Thalia led Callista to a glade filled with shimmering light. Fireflies danced in the twilight, their glow illuminating a circle of stones. Thalia turned to her, her expression serious. "Tonight, you must face your fear," Thalia said, her voice almost lost amidst the hum of the forest. "Every witch, every guardian of the forest must pass through the shadows to find their light." Callista swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. "What must I do?" Thalia gestured to the circle of stones. "Enter the circle and close your eyes. The forest will show you what lies within, both the darkness and the light. You must not run, no matter what you see." Callista nodded, her palms sweaty. She stepped into the circle, the stones cool beneath her bare feet. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath, the world around her fading into darkness. At first, there was silence. Then, the whispers returned, louder, harsher, their words twisting into fears she had never voiced. She saw her brother, lost and calling for her. She saw herself, alone, the forest closing in around her, the shadows growing darker, more menacing. The fear gripped her, tightening around her chest like a vice. But then she heard another voice, a soft, gentle hum that cut through the darkness. It was her grandmother's voice, singing a lullaby she remembered from her childhood. The shadows seemed to waver, their edges blurring, and Callista focused on that song, letting it guide her. She remembered her grandmother's warm embrace, the stories she would tell by the fire, and the love that had always been her anchor. The darkness began to lift, the whispers fading until there was only light. Callista opened her eyes, the glade around her glowing with the soft light of the fireflies. Thalia stood before her, her eyes filled with pride. "You faced your fears and found your light," Thalia said, her voice filled with warmth. "You are ready, Callista." Chapter 3. Days turned into weeks, and Callista learned to listen to the forest in ways she never imagined. She learned the language of the wind, the stories hidden within the rings of ancient trees, and the songs of the river that spoke of time flowing endlessly. Each lesson was a test, not of her strength, but of her heart, her courage. One evening, Thalia brought Callista to a grove where an ancient oak stood, its branches reaching towards the sky like the arms of an elder. The tree was sacred, its bark etched with runes that glowed faintly in the moonlight. Thalia placed a hand on the trunk, her expression solemn. "This tree has seen countless seasons, countless lives," Thalia said. "It holds the memories of the forest, the joy, the pain, the hope. Today you must add your own memory to it. Speak your truth, Callista, and let the forest know your heart." Callista hesitated, her fingers brushing against the rough bark. She closed her eyes, feeling the energy of the tree, the life that pulsed beneath its surface. She thought of her family, her brother's laughter, her grandmother's stories, the warmth of the village. She thought of her fears, the shadows she had faced, and the light she had found within herself. "I am Callista," she whispered, her voice steady. "I am not afraid of the darkness, for I carry the light within me. I will protect this forest, and I will honor its magic." The runes on the tree glowed brighter, the light spreading across the bark like a ripple. The wind picked up, swirling around them, and Callista felt a warmth in her chest, a connection to the forest that was deeper than anything she had ever known. Thalia smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "You have done well, Callista. The forest has accepted you as one of its own." Chapter 4. The next morning, Thalia led Callista to the edge of the whispering woods. The village lay beyond, the rooftops visible through the trees. Callista felt a pang of longing, her heart torn between the forest and her family. "You have a choice, Callista," Thalia said, her voice soft. "You can return to your village, live your life as you always have. Or you can stay, learn the ways of the forest, and become its guardian." Callista looked at Thalia, her heart heavy. She thought of her brother, her grandmother, the warmth of her family's hearth. But she also thought of the forest, the magic she had felt, the connection to something greater than herself. The forest had become a part of her, its whispers a constant presence in her mind.
"Can I not be both?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Can I not be a guardian of the forest and still be with my family?"
Thalia smiled, her eyes filled with a gentle light. "The forest is not a cage, dear one. It is a part of you, as much as your family is. You may go where your heart leads you, and the forest will always be with you." Callista felt tears welling in her eyes, and she nodded. She turned, looking back at the village, then at Thalia. "I will return to my family, but I will come back whenever the forest calls." Thalia nodded, her smile soft. "The forest will always welcome you, Callista. Go, and may your heart always be your guide." Chapter 5. Callista returned to her village, her heart filled with both joy and longing. She shared her stories with her brother, her grandmother, and soon the villagers no longer spoke of the witch with fear. They spoke of Thalia with respect, with awe, and Callista knew she had changed something, brought light where once there was only fear. One day, as the first frost of winter touched the earth, Callista stood at the edge of the whispering woods once more. She closed her eyes, the whispers of the forest wrapping around her like an old friend. "Callista," a voice called, and she opened her eyes to see her brother Petros standing beside her. "Are you going back?" Callista smiled, her heart light. "Not yet, Petros, but one day I will." Petros nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. Together they turned, walking back towards the village, the whispers of the woods following them, a promise of adventure yet to come. As the days grew colder, Callista found herself drawn to the edge of the woods more often. She would sit beneath the ancient oaks, listening to the whispers, feeling the pulse of the forest. The villagers began to join her, curious and eager to learn. She taught them what she had learned from Thalia, the language of the wind, the songs of the earth, the magic that lay within each of them. The village changed, slowly but surely. The fear that had once gripped them was replaced by wonder, by a sense of connection to the world around them. The children would run to the edge of the woods, their laughter echoing through the trees, and Callista would smile, knowing that the magic of the whispering woods was now a part of their lives as well. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest seemed to sigh, a gentle breeze carrying a whisper, a promise that the magic of the whispering woods was far from over. For every ending was but a beginning, and the tale of the alchemist's apprentice was yet to unfold. The Alchemist's Apprentice. Chapter 1. In a town nestled between rolling hills and ancient oak forests, there stood a solitary tower. It was a strange, spiraling structure of stone and metal, rising far above the rooftops of the village below. The villagers called it the Alchemist's Tower, a place shrouded in both wonder and fear. Many believed it to be enchanted, and stories spread of the mysterious man who lived there, a man who was said to possess the secrets of the universe itself, who could transform base metals into gold and brew potions that granted eternal youth. The alchemist's name was Gregor, a man of sharp eyes and even sharper wit, though few had seen him in person. He rarely descended from his lofty residence, preferring the company of his tomes and experiments over that of people. He was not an unkind man, but he was guarded, wary of the greed and folly he had seen in others. The townsfolk respected him, but they also feared the power he wielded. Young Emil had grown up hearing tales of the alchemist's tower. His mother would tell him stories as they sat by the fire, tales of Gregor's strange abilities, how he could turn water into wine, heal the sick, and summon lightning with a flick of his wrist. Emil's fascination only grew as he aged. He was not content with mere stories. He wanted to understand the truth behind the magic. He wanted to see the tower from the inside, to witness the alchemist's craft firsthand. One day, when the curiosity within Emil could no longer be contained, he gathered his courage and made his way to the tower. The villagers watched as he approached, their whispers following him like shadows. "Foolish boy, they muttered, shaking their heads. He will only find trouble there. Emil, however, was determined. He climbed the winding path that led to the tower's entrance, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. He stood before the massive wooden door, its surface carved with strange symbols that seemed to shift and shimmer in the light. Taking a deep breath, he raised his hand and knocked. For a long moment there was silence. Then the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. A figure stood in the doorway, his eyes as sharp as the rumors had described. Gregor, the alchemist, regarded Emil with a curious expression, his brow furrowed. "What brings you here, boy?" Gregor asked, his voice deep and commanding. Emil swallowed, his throat dry. "I wish to learn, sir. I want to be your apprentice." Gregor studied him for a moment longer, then stepped aside, gesturing for Emil to enter. "Very well. But know this. The path you seek is not an easy one. It is filled with danger and sacrifice. If you are truly willing, then step inside and leave your old life behind." Emil hesitated only for a heartbeat before stepping through the threshold, the door closing behind him with a heavy thud. The room was filled with shelves of books, jars of strange substances, and a faint glow from the many alchemical symbols etched into the walls. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and something metallic, almost like lightning before a storm. "You may call me Master Gregor," the alchemist said, his eyes never leaving Emil. "And from this day forth, you are no longer a boy of the village. You are an apprentice of alchemy." Chapter 2. The days that followed were unlike anything Emil had ever experienced. Gregor was a demanding teacher, his lessons rigorous and unrelenting. He began each day before dawn, waking Emil with a sharp rap on the door to his small, sparse room at the base of the tower. There were no comforts here, only a narrow bed, a wooden chest for his few belongings, and a small window that let in a sliver of light. "Alchemy is not for the faint of heart," Gregor would say, as he led Emil to the main chamber of the tower, where the air was always thick with the scent of herbs and the faint metallic tang of various concoctions. It requires discipline, patience, and above all, a willingness to face failure. Emil learned quickly that failure was indeed a frequent companion in the alchemist's tower. His first task was a simple one. Gregor had handed him a mortar and pestle and instructed him to grind dried valerian root into a fine powder. Emil had tried his best, but his inexperience showed, and the powder was coarse and uneven. Gregor had not scolded him. Instead, he had merely taken the mortar from Emil's hands, inspecting the contents with a critical eye. "Again," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You must learn to do it properly, or the potion will be worthless." Days turned into weeks, and Emil's tasks grew more complex. He learned to identify various herbs by their scent alone, to extract essential oils, and to combine ingredients in precise measurements. Gregor was a patient teacher, but he demanded perfection, and Emil found himself working late into the night, his hands stained with the colors of various plants and minerals. One evening, as the sun set beyond the hills, casting the tower in a golden glow, Gregor called Emil to his side. On the table before them lay a small vial, its contents shimmering with an iridescent light. "This," Gregor said, his voice low, "is the elixir of clarity. It allows one to see beyond the veil of the mundane, to perceive the true nature of things. It is a powerful potion, and it requires absolute precision to create." Emil watched in awe as Gregor carefully added a few drops of a deep blue liquid to the vial, the mixture bubbling and changing color. The alchemist's hands were steady, his movements deliberate, and practiced. He turned to Emil, his gaze intense. "Tonight you will attempt to create this elixir," Gregor said. "But be warned, alchemy is as much about the spirit as it is about the hands. If your heart is not steady, if your mind is not clear, the potion will turn to poison." Emil nodded, his heart pounding. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had worked for weeks to reach this point, and he would not fail now. Carefully, he measured the ingredients, his hands trembling slightly as he added them to the vial. The mixture began to bubble, and for a moment, Emil felt a surge of hope. Perhaps he had done it. But then the liquid darkened, a foul smell filling the air. Gregor reached out, his hand closing over Emil's, stopping him before he could add the final ingredient. "Enough," Gregor said, his voice gentle. "You are not ready yet, Emil, but do not despair. Failure is a part of learning. You will try again and again until you succeed." Emil nodded, his shoulders slumping. He felt the sting of disappointment, but also a determination that burned brighter than ever. He would learn. He would master the art of alchemy, no matter how long it took. Chapter 3. One night, long after Gregor had retired to his chambers, Emil found himself unable to sleep. The failure of the elixir of clarity weighed heavily on his mind, the memory of the darkened potion and Gregor's disappointed gaze replaying over and over. He rose from his bed, wrapping a cloak around his shoulders, and made his way to the main chamber of the tower. The room was silent, the only light coming from the embers of the fire in the hearth. Emil moved to the shelves, his fingers brushing over the spines of the many books that lined them. Most were written in languages he could not read, their titles filled with strange symbols and runes. He paused before a particularly large tome, its cover bound in dark leather. It seemed to hum beneath his fingers, a faint vibration that sent a shiver down his spine. Curiosity got the better of him, and Emil pulled the book from the shelf. As he did, he heard a soft click, and the wall beside the shelf shifted, a hidden door swinging open. Emil stared, his heart pounding. He glanced around, half expecting Gregor to appear, but the tower was silent. Slowly, Emil stepped through the doorway, his breath caught in his throat. The passage beyond was narrow, the walls lined with symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. He followed the passage, his footsteps echoing softly until he came to a small chamber. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and upon it rested a small, ornate box. Emil approached, his eyes wide with wonder. The box was made of silver, its surface engraved with intricate designs. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the cool metal, and the box opened with a soft click. Inside was a vial, its contents glowing with a soft, golden light. Emil's breath caught in his throat. He knew what this was. He had heard Gregor speak of it in hushed tones. It was the elixir of life, a potion that could heal any wound, cure any illness. It was the pinnacle of alchemy, the greatest achievement of any alchemist.
Emil's heart raced as he stared at the vial.
He knew he should not be here, that he should not have found this place, but the temptation was overwhelming. What if he could prove himself? What if he could show Gregor that he was worthy, that he had the potential to be more than just an apprentice? He reached out, his fingers closing around the vial, and in that moment the chamber seemed to shudder. The symbols on the walls flared to life, their light blinding, and Emil heard a voice, a deep, resonant voice that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. "You dare to touch what is not yours," the voice intoned, filled with both anger and sorrow. "The path of alchemy is not one of greed, but of wisdom. You must prove your worth, or be lost to the darkness. Emil felt the ground shift beneath him, the chamber seeming to spin. He stumbled back, the vial slipping from his grasp. The light faded, and the hidden door swung shut, leaving Emil alone in the darkness, his heart pounding in his chest. Chapter 4. The next morning, Emil awoke in his small room, his head aching and his memories of the previous night hazy. He rose, his body heavy with exhaustion, and made his way to the main chamber. Gregor was already there, his eyes sharp as he watched Emil enter. "You look as though you've seen a ghost," Gregor said, his voice tinged with amusement. "Tell me, Emil, what did you find last night?" Emil froze, his heart skipping a beat. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Gregor's gaze softened, and he gestured for Emil to sit. "There are secrets in this tower that are not meant for you. Not yet," Gregor said. "The elixir of life is not a prize to be claimed, but a responsibility to be earned. Alchemy is not about power, Emil. It is about balance, about understanding the world and one's place within it." Emil lowered his gaze, shame washing over him. "I'm sorry, Master Gregor. I wanted to prove myself." Gregor nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I understand your desire, Emil, but you must learn patience. The path you have chosen is not an easy one, and there are no shortcuts. You must be willing to learn, to grow, and to accept your failures as part of the journey." He rose, moving to a shelf and taking down a small, worn book. He handed it to Emil, his eyes filled with a gentle warmth. "This is your next lesson. It is a simple text, but it holds the foundation of all alchemy. Study it, and when you are ready, we will try again." Emil took the book, his hands trembling. He looked up at Gregor, his eyes filled with determination. "Thank you, Master. I will not disappoint you." Gregor smiled, a rare expression that softened the sharp lines of his face. "I know you won't, Emil. You have the heart of an alchemist. Now let us begin anew." Chapter 5. The weeks that followed were some of the most challenging of Emil's life. He studied the book Gregor had given him, its pages filled with intricate diagrams and detailed explanations of the basic principles of alchemy. He practiced tirelessly, his hands stained with the colors of various herbs and minerals, his mind filled with the knowledge of the natural world. Gregor was patient, guiding Emil through each lesson, each failure. He taught him not just the mechanics of alchemy, but the philosophy behind it, the importance of balance, of respect for the natural world, of understanding that true power came not from control, but from harmony. One evening, as the sun set beyond the hills, Gregor called Emil to his side once more. On the table before them lay the ingredients for the elixir of clarity, each one carefully measured and prepared. "Tonight you will try again," Gregor said, his voice calm. "But remember, Emil, alchemy is as much about the heart as it is about the hands. Trust in yourself and in the knowledge you have gained." Emil took a deep breath, his hands steady as he began to mix the ingredients. He moved with care, his mind clear, his heart focused. The liquid began to bubble, its color shifting, and Emil felt a surge of hope. He added the final ingredient, the mixture glowing with a soft, iridescent light. Gregor watched, his eyes filled with pride, as Emil carefully poured the elixir into a vial. The potion shimmered, its light reflecting in Emil's eyes, and he felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he had ever known. "Well done, Emil," Gregor said, his voice filled with warmth. "You have done it. You have created the elixir of clarity." Emil smiled, his heart light. He had faced his fears, his failures, and he had emerged stronger. He knew that his journey was far from over, but for the first time he felt truly worthy of the title of alchemist's apprentice. Chapter 6. As the days turned into months, Emil's skills grew, his understanding of alchemy deepening with each passing lesson. He learned to create potions that could heal, that could reveal hidden truths, that could bring comfort to those in need. The villagers, once wary of the alchemist's tower, began to see it as a place of hope, a place where magic and wisdom came together to serve the greater good. Gregor watched his apprentice with pride, knowing that one day Emil would surpass even his own abilities. The young boy who had once stood at his door, filled with fear and determination, had grown into a true alchemist, one who understood that the greatest magic lay not in the potions he created, but in the love and respect he held for the world around him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the tower in a golden glow, Gregor called Emil to his side. He handed him a small, ornate box, the same box Emil had once found in the hidden chamber. "It is time," Gregor said, his voice filled with emotion. "The elixir of life is now yours to protect. You have proven yourself, Emil. You are no longer just my apprentice. You are an alchemist in your own right." Emil took the box, his hands trembling, his eyes filled with tears. He looked up at Gregor, his heart filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Master. I will honor your teachings, and I will protect the secrets of alchemy." Gregor smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "I know you will, Emil. The world is in need of alchemists like you, those who seek not power, but wisdom, who understand that true magic lies in the heart." And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Emil knew that his journey was only just beginning. He had learned the secrets of alchemy, but more importantly, he had learned the value of patience, of balance, and of the light that lay within each of us. The Midnight Council of Witches. Chapter 1. The moon hung full and heavy in the sky, casting a silver glow over the forest below. It was the night of the gathering, the night when witches from every corner of the land converged in the heart of the mistwood forest. The air was thick with anticipation, the whispers of magic vibrating through the ancient trees, whose branches swayed as though they knew the secrets that were about to be unveiled. Deep within the forest lay the clearing, a wide, circular space surrounded by towering oaks and bathed in moonlight. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone altar, its surface etched with runes that glowed faintly in the night. This was the sacred place, the meeting ground for the Midnight Council of Witches. Once every season they came together to share knowledge, to debate, and to protect the balance of magic in the world. The first to arrive was Elysia, a tall, slender woman with raven-black hair and eyes that shimmered like stars. She wore a cloak of midnight blue, its hem embroidered with silver threads that caught the light. She moved with the grace of a shadow, her footsteps silent as she approached the altar. Elysia was the High Witch, the leader of the council, and it was she who had called this meeting, for there was a growing darkness that threatened their world. One by one the other witches arrived, their appearances as diverse as their magic. There was Bryn, a fiery-haired enchantress whose laughter was said to bring the spring rains. Leora, a healer with a gentle touch and eyes as green as the forest, and Morgana, a witch of the wilds, her hair tangled with leaves and twigs, her gaze as fierce as a wolf's. Each witch brought her own power, her own skills, and together they formed the Midnight Council, a force of wisdom and magic, bound by ancient oaths. Elysia stood before the altar, her gaze sweeping over her fellow witches. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice carrying across the clearing, filled with both strength and urgency. "There is a darkness stirring, a force that seeks to upset the balance of our world. We must stand united, or all that we hold dear will be lost." The witches exchanged glances, a ripple of unease passing through them. They had all felt it, the strange energy that had been growing stronger over the past few months. It was as if the very fabric of magic was being torn, the natural harmony disrupted by an unseen hand. "What is this darkness?" Bryn asked, her fiery hair catching the light as she stepped forward. "I have felt it too, but I cannot see its source." Elysia's expression darkened, her eyes narrowing. "It is a force born of greed and hatred. There are those who seek to control magic, to bend it to their will, without regard for the consequences. They are gathering power, and if they succeed, they will plunge our world into chaos." A murmur of concern spread through the witches, their eyes widening as they listened. Magic was a gift, a force that flowed through all things, connecting the earth, the sky, and every living being. To control it, to force it to obey, was to defy the natural order, a path that led only to destruction. "What must we do?" Leora asked, her voice soft but filled with determination. "How can we protect the balance?" Elysia took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "We must work together. We must pool our magic, our knowledge, and create a barrier, one that will protect the source of magic from those who would corrupt it. But it will not be easy. The ritual requires great power, and we must all be willing to make sacrifices." The witches nodded, their expressions resolute. They had taken an oath to protect the balance of magic, and they would not falter now. Together they formed a circle around the altar, their hands clasped, their eyes closed as they began to chant. The words were ancient, passed down through generations of witches, a prayer to the earth and the sky, to the spirits that watched over them. The air grew thick with power, the ground beneath them trembling as their magic flowed together, weaving a tapestry of light and shadow. The runes on the altar glowed brighter, the light spreading outward, forming a barrier that shimmered in the moonlight. It was beautiful, a testament to the strength of their bond, to the power that lay within each of them. But even as they worked, Elysia felt a shadow pressing against her mind, a dark presence that watched from the edges of the clearing, waiting, biding its time. She knew that their struggle was far from over, that the darkness would not be so easily vanquished. But for now they had taken a stand, and they would not back down. Chapter 2. The following day, as the sun rose over Mistwood Forest, the clearing lay empty, the witches having dispersed to their homes. But the magic they had woven remained, a shimmering barrier that protected the heart of the forest. Yet Elysia could not shake the feeling that the darkness was closer than they had realized, that their enemy was already among them, hiding in the shadows. She returned to her home, a small cottage hidden deep within the forest, surrounded by wildflowers and ancient trees. It was a place of peace, a sanctuary where she had always felt safe. But now, as she approached, she felt a chill in the air, a sense of unease that made her pause. Pushing open the door, Elysia stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room. Everything seemed as it should be. The herbs hanging from the rafters, the fire crackling in the hearth, the books lining the shelves. But then she saw it, a dark, swirling mist seeping from beneath the door to her study, a presence that filled her with dread. Elysia took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she approached the door. She knew what this was, the darkness that had been growing, the force that sought to corrupt the magic of their world. It had found her, and it was not going to let her go without a fight. With a flick of her wrist, Elysia summoned a ball of light, its glow illuminating the shadows that clung to the door. She pushed it open, the mist swirling around her, its cold touch sending shivers down her spine. In the center of the room stood a figure, cloaked in darkness, its face hidden beneath a hood. "Who are you?" Elysia demanded, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. "Why are you here?" The figure lifted its head, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "I am the herald of the new order," it said, its voice echoing with a cold, hollow tone. "Magic is power, and power belongs to those who are willing to take it. You and your council are fools, clinging to your outdated beliefs. The world is changing, and you cannot stop it." Elysia's eyes narrowed, her hand tightening around the ball of light. "Magic is not a weapon to be wielded for power. It is a gift, a force that must be respected. You will not corrupt it." The figure laughed, a sound that sent a chill through Elysia's bones. "You cannot stop what is coming, witch. The darkness is already here, and it will consume everything you hold dear." With a wave of its hand, the figure disappeared, the mist dissipating, leaving the room cold and empty. Elysia stood there, her heart pounding, her mind racing. The darkness was closer than she had thought, and it was not going to wait for them to act. They had to move quickly, or everything they had fought for would be lost. Chapter 3. Elysia knew that they could not face this threat alone. The Midnight Council was powerful, but the darkness was growing, and they needed allies, those who understood the true nature of magic, who were willing to stand against the coming storm. She needed to find the Old Ones, the guardians of the ancient ways, those who had retreated from the world, but whose power was unmatched. The first on her list was Selene, the Moon Witch. Selene lived far to the north, in the icy reaches beyond the mountains, where the auroras danced across the sky in ribbons of green and blue. She was a solitary figure, her magic tied to the cycles of the moon, her wisdom as deep as the ocean. It was said that she could see into the future, that her visions had guided the witches for centuries. Elysia set out at dawn, her path taking her through dense forests and over rugged hills, her heart heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. She travelled for days, her journey long and arduous, but she did not falter. The wind howled around her, the cold biting at her skin, but she pressed on, her determination unwavering. At last, she reached Selene's dwelling, a small stone cottage nestled at the edge of a frozen lake, the ice shimmering beneath the pale light of the moon. Elysia approached, her breath visible in the frigid air, and knocked on the door. For a long moment there was silence, and then the door opened, revealing a woman with hair as white as snow and eyes that seemed to hold the light of the moon itself. "Elysia," Selene said, her voice soft, her gaze piercing. "I have been expecting you." Elysia nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and urgency. "The darkness is growing, Selene. We need your help. The Midnight Council cannot face this alone." Selene stepped aside, gesturing for Elysia to enter. The inside of the cottage was warm, a fire crackling in the hearth, the walls lined with shelves filled with crystals and herbs. Selene moved to a small table, her eyes never leaving Elysia as she spoke. "I have seen the darkness in my visions," Selene said, her voice filled with a quiet sorrow. "It is a force unlike any we have faced before, born of greed, of a desire for control. It will not be easily defeated." Elysia took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "Will you help us? Will you stand with the council?" Selene's gaze softened, and she nodded. "Yes, I will stand with you. But we will need more than just my magic. We must call upon the old allies, the guardians of the wilds, the keepers of the flame. Only together can we hope to protect the balance." Elysia felt a surge of hope, her heart lifting. "Then let us gather them. We will not let the darkness win." Chapter 4. Their next destination was the heart of the wildwood, where the guardians of the wilds dwelled. These were witches who had forsaken the ways of civilization, choosing instead to live in harmony with the natural world. They were fierce and powerful, their magic tied to the earth, to the creatures that roamed the forests, to the very heartbeat of the land. Elysia and Selene travelled together, their journey taking them through dense woods and across rushing rivers, the air filled with the sounds of the wild. It was a place of beauty, untouched by the hands of men, where the magic of the earth was strong and vibrant. As they approached the heart of the wildwood, they were met by a figure, tall and imposing, her hair tangled with leaves, her eyes as fierce as a storm. It was Morgana, the leader of the Guardians, her presence commanding, her gaze sharp as she regarded the two witches. "Elysia! Selene!" Morgana said, her voice a low growl. "Why have you come here?" Elysia stepped forward, her eyes meeting Morgana's. "The darkness is growing, Morgana. It seeks to corrupt the magic of our world, to bend it to its will. We need your help. The Midnight Council cannot face this alone." Morgana's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. "The darkness you speak of, it has already touched our woods. The animals grow restless. The trees whisper of a shadow that moves among them. We have felt it, and we are ready to fight." Selene stepped forward, her voice calm. "We must stand together, Morgana. The darkness is powerful, but together we are stronger. Will you join us?" Morgana was silent for a long moment, her gaze shifting to the forest around them. Finally, she nodded, her expression fierce. "We will stand with you. The wildwood will not fall to the darkness." Chapter 5. With the guardians of the wilds on their side, Elysia, Selene, and Morgana returned to the Mistwood Forest, where the rest of the Midnight Council awaited them. The air was thick with anticipation, the tension palpable as the witches gathered once more in the clearing, their eyes filled with determination. The ritual they were about to perform was one of the most powerful in the history of their kind, a ritual of unity, a weaving of magic that would bind their power together, creating a barrier that no darkness could penetrate. It was a dangerous ritual, one that required absolute trust, for if even one witch faltered, the consequences would be dire. Elysia stood before the altar, her gaze sweeping over the gathered witches. "Tonight we stand united," she said, her voice carrying across the clearing. "We will not allow the darkness to corrupt what we hold dear. Together we will create a barrier, a shield that will protect the magic of our world." The witches formed a circle around the altar, their hands clasped, their eyes closed as they began to chant. The words were ancient, a prayer to the earth, to the sky, to the spirits that watched over them. The air grew thick with power, the ground beneath them trembling as their magic flowed together, weaving a tapestry of light and shadow. The runes on the altar glowed brighter, the light spreading outward, forming a barrier that shimmered in the moonlight. It was beautiful, a testament to the strength of their bond, to the power that lay within each of them. But even as they worked, Elysia felt the darkness pressing against their barrier, a force that sought to break through, to corrupt the magic they had woven. She could feel its hatred, its greed, and she knew that this was only the beginning, that their struggle was far from over. She looked to her fellow witches, their faces set with determination, their voices steady as they chanted. They would not falter. They would not let the darkness win. Together, they would protect the balance of magic, no matter the cost. Chapter 6. The ritual lasted through the night, the witches' voices never wavering, their magic flowing together, creating a barrier that shimmered with the first light of dawn. As the sun rose over the mistwood forest, the clearing was filled with a sense of peace, a quiet calm that seemed to settle over the land. Elysia stood before the altar, her heart heavy with exhaustion, but filled with hope. They had done it. They had created a barrier, a shield that would protect the magic of their world. But she knew that their work was far from over, that the darkness would not give up so easily. She turned to her fellow witches, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft. "We have taken a stand, but we must remain vigilant. The darkness will return, and when it does, we must be ready." Selene stepped forward, her eyes shining with determination. "We will stand together, Elysia, the Midnight Council, the guardians of the wilds, the keepers of the flame. We will protect the balance, no matter the cost." Morgana nodded, her expression fierce. "The darkness may be powerful, but it will never be stronger than the light we hold within us." Elysia smiled, her heart lifting. They had faced the darkness, and they had emerged stronger. They had created a bond, a unity that could not be broken, and they would protect the magic of their world, no matter the cost. And as the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, Elysia knew that this was only the beginning, that their journey was far from over, but they would face whatever came together, united in their purpose, their hearts filled with hope. As the forest settled into a peaceful hush, the Midnight Council dispersed, their work done for now. The moonlight softened, casting a tranquil glow over the clearing as though blessing their efforts. And so, dear listener, as the witches of the Midnight Council rest, so too can you. Let their courage and unity guide you into a night of deep, peaceful sleep. The darkness has been held at bay, and the balance is safe for now. Good night, and may you awaken renewed, ready to face your own challenges with the same strength and light.